record. There we go, recording. I hope you all realize that this is being recorded. The reason we're recording it actually is so that we can hopefully replay it. We can replay it on Thursday afternoon. We had 250 people say that they were interested in attending this. So that's a really, really significant interest that we've had. We've done a number of webinars in the past, and this is now by far the most popular we've done, which is I'm very pleased. So thank you for your input in making this happen, Mel. I have this sort of, as Mel described it earlier, it's a bit of like the newsreader before the news goes to live and you're sort of chit-chatting at the desk. That's sort of what I'm going to do now till just for a couple more minutes as we sort of try and let anyone come on board who may be trying to get in. I think we're all getting quite proficient at Zoom, but like Mel just experienced, it can have some issues. And can I unmute Mel? Yes, I can unmute Mel. Make co-host, let's see if that works. Mel, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
I'm here.
Oh, there we go. I can now hear you. Oh, there we go.
Hello.
So bang on 11 o'clock, look at that, arrival just on time. Thank you for that, Mel. That's exciting. As I said, I'm just going to give everyone just a couple more minutes. I'm sorry that we're pretty efficient normally at Auscare Support. We're pretty efficient at keeping these things to time. But just because we've experienced with Mel having some issues, we will just let a few other people just sort of come on board as they will. As I said, we are recording this conceptually so that we can replay it for those people that perhaps couldn't attend it. And I'd like to apologize before I start, really. Of course, I've started this webinar and then they've decided to start drilling outside of my window at my home here in Bondi. So look, I hope that you don't hear too much of that in the background. As I say, we've got a few people here, but we'll just give it 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll kick into gear. With the webinar, look, it should last 25, maybe 25, 30 minutes, depending on some questions at the end. We'll go through some housekeeping, but I guess we need to reiterate that this is a webinar of general interest in investment. It's not considered to be advice. So we will reiterate that a couple of times during the webinar, just so that we can, I guess we don't want to pretend to be anything that we're not, or to give you any advice that you may use in the future. We want this to be a general of nature and of interest. So we're really excited that you can join us. So look, I'm always keen to get these going as well. Now,
Me too.
1 minute past 11. I keep looking at the clock going, oh my goodness, that was like the slowest minute. And look, I guess just as an aside, my son who attends Waverley College yesterday had a Zoom webinar like this with his year 12. He's in year 12 doing HSC, bit of a struggle for him at the moment. And he did have a situation where someone overtook their Zoom and played a little meme from YouTube. It was a gentleman eating chips. It wasn't anything rude or anything, but the IT team said it's just one of those things that Zoom has some weak security. So look, if that does happen, please bear with us. We'll try and get rid of the intruder and carry on as normal. Look, it's a couple of minutes past there. We might just kick into it. So I wanted to, thank you all for joining us on this webinar. This is the 6th in the series of webinars that Auscare Support are presenting. And the topic today, which is a really exciting one, is Specialist Disability Accommodation, or SDA, and how investing in SDA can really have a life-changing impact on the lives of NDIS participants and those eligible for SDA funding. Before we kick in, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. And in the spirit of reconciliation, Auscare Support and Reflect Money acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. The traditional owners of the land on which we are hosting this webinar today are from the Gadigal, Bidjigal, and Birrabirragal people. So welcome to How Investing in SDA Can Have a Life-Changing Impact, a webinar brought to you by Auscare Support, of which I am CEO, and Reflect Money. We're very excited. We're very excited to be here today. Just a bit of housekeeping, I guess. We have asked you to keep your cameras off and keep your Zooms on mute. And if you want to ask questions, we're happy to take some questions in the chat. The content of this webinar is general in nature, so please be aware that if you want to discuss anything in relation to today's webinar, specifically in relation to your own circumstances, please just contact either Auscare Support if it's an NDIS question, or Reflect Money if it's an investment question, or it's an Sda question. For those of you who don't know Auscare Support, we are a registered provider of NDIS, National Disability Insurance Scheme services, and we are nationally accredited. Our services include plan management, support coordination. We have a unique product called Budget Builder and Budget Builder Plus that helps you unpack your budgets and your plans. And we have a really cool relationship with the platform Able that enables agency managed participants to access that platform. Joining me today, and I'm very pleased to welcome, is Melanie Davis, Managing Director of Reflect Money Group. Mel has extensive experience in the financial services industry and has worked as a broker, mentor, private lending expert, and professional relationship developer. And Reflect Money Group are the leader in making investments in Sda a reality for participants and their families. Welcome, Mel Davies.
Thank you, Max. I don't think I could ever talk myself up like that. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. Mel, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and Reflect Money Group?
Sure. So Reflect Money is actually built with over 100 years experience in finance and property, so real estate finance and asset type or asset classes. So we've actually got a wealth of experience across a multitude of lending specialities. Now, the Sda or NDIS one was something that really shone out of something that not a lot of brokers were particularly au fait with, and they weren't across it. So we made that one of our specialities. It's something that Reflect Money actually do really well, is we take the kind of the harder road, the road that we know people need the most guidance and education on, and that's what we pride ourselves on. So for me personally, I've got 23 years industry experience in finance. I have worked in everything from our traditional banks, building products, right through to obviously broking, which is my absolute passion, because there's nothing better than actually helping a client become, an investor or a first home buyer, but going right through on the journey. And that's what most of our clients actually have with us. We're not kind of there for one deal, we're there for their complete financial needs.
Thank you, Mel. I just got stuck with the unmute there. Thank you, Mel. Look, and before we get into, I guess, some of the detail around how Mel can help you, what I thought I'd do is just have a little brief introduction to Sda. And look, I don't profess to being the expert on this. It's an incredibly complex field in the Sda, but essentially Specialist Disability Accommodation refers to accommodation for people who require housing solutions to assist with the delivery of supports that cater for extreme functional impairment or high support needs. And funding is provided to only a small portion of the NDIS who have those two things, or one of those two things, extreme functional impairment or high support needs. The NDIA assesses whether a person is eligible for Sda in line with the NDIS Sda rules 2016. If you have a home and living goal, the NDIS will ask you to complete a home and living supports request form. And the decision around eligibility for Sda is based around three fundamental questions. And of course, there's a huge amount of sub-questions. And we won't go into those today, but the three strategic questions, or the three fundamental questions to decide if someone is eligible for Sda funding are: do you have an extreme functional impairment or very high support needs? Do you have an Sda needs requirement? And is Sda reasonable and necessary for you? So obviously reasonable and necessary is one of the buzzwords of the NDIS. It's something that is in constant conversation and constant definition. But where a participant is eligible for Sda, the NDI will provide that participant with an amount of funding that considers the needs of the participants' goals and preferences, and calculates the Sda funding based on a number of criteria, including the design category, which is determined by the participant's support needs, the dwelling type, which is determined by both the goals and the needs of the participant to achieve those goals, and the location, determined by both goals and needs of participants, which represent value for money. And obviously that is a conceptual idea that we won't get into today. But SDA funding under the NDIS will stimulate investment in the development of new high-quality dwellings for use by eligible NDIS participants. Very clear that the NDIS and SDA is not the support services, but it's actually the homes in which those services are offered. Specialist Disability and the Supply of in Australia, a report that was released by Housing Hub and Summer Foundation, based on the survey of 57 SDA developers in October and November of 2020, there are roughly 1,800 SDA places in development. When combined with the latest NDIA data on SDA, there are an estimated total of 13,300 places that are available in the pipeline. But it is expected that there are 28,000 eligible to live in SDA when the scheme is rolled out. So you can see there's a huge gap. So Melanie, let's get your insights into SDA and how you and the team at Reflect Money can assist investors. So we know that there's demand. Mel, let's chat about how we can stimulate the supply. And I'm just gonna share my screen with you and pull up some slides.
Yep. So I actually first started seeing people inquiring about NDIS or SDA properties probably around 2018. And fundamentally, there was no product in the market for them at the time. What we were doing back then was simply using people's equity in their current homes or investment portfolios to try and pull enough cash out, and that was the only way that you could do it, so you could actually go and build one of these special purpose properties. Now, that has changed substantially. And the push for it has been, of course, supply and demand. So banks don't necessarily jump onto an idea quickly. They need encouragement. They need, obviously, the government to first off set the rules, which they did. I think it was about 2017, if I'm not wrong there, Max, that NDIS actually rolled out, roughly.
It was 2016 that the national scheme was rolled out, although 2020 was when we all could speed up to, and state by state was seeded. Yeah. So let's move from 2020 onwards, where some of the banks actually did recognise the need for this, or some of the institutions, but the way that they actually, the way that they categorise the lending is very, very different. So Reflect Money's had to work really, really hard with providers in able to come up with something that's actually available for everyday people. So one thing that we need to understand about NDIS lending, it actually has nothing to do with being a participant in NDIS yourself. It is simply a vehicle in which a person can invest, where they want to invest or they want to purchase a property for a family or loved one, or they want to simply do it from an investment point of view. So a cash flow or an income generating thing. So the thing that Max has actually put up here for me is it's a case study. Now, I'm just going to let you all know that every bit of information provided in here is actually provided by third parties. And the reason for that is because I'm a broker. I don't give advice at all. So I'm not involved in tax implications, no financial planning or financial advice. My job is to simply recommend a product to someone based on their specific needs. So in this slide, Wealth Street Property, who is actually a property acquisition company, has been able to provide us this case study. Now, it is a live case study. So this is something that has been done for a client that I participated in. And the reason why we've actually put up here their income, it's really important because there's some matrices that go on in the background to do with their income tax, for example. So just keep that in mind. So for this, we've used someone on an income of $80,000. It's an individual, so one person. Their equity that they've put in is 30%. Now, just to break that down for you, that could either be a cash subsidy of 30% going into this purchase, or it could also be used from equity, another property that we're drawing that from. Again, just reiterating, these figures were given to us by Wealth Street Property about NDIS, and it was actually compared to traditional properties out of realestate.com. So one of the questions that we get a lot is, what kind of property can I actually invest in? You know, people tend to have an idea of what an NDIS property is, that it's almost like a fabricated property with, you know, possibly ramps, and that it stands out from the traditional neighbourhood. The point of this is to actually bring people into a community, have their properties look the same as everybody else.
So our next slide actually goes through one in particular. Now, this is what we call the NDIS versus traditional in New South Wales. Now, there's two areas that we've actually picked here, and the top property there to the top left of the screen is actually the NDIS property. Now, there's a couple of things that I'm going to go through with you, and this is something I really need to point out. NDIS properties traditionally, between the cost and the actual valuation that the bank comes up with, there is usually a deficit. Now, the reason for that is some of the inclusions that are actually in that property don't necessarily count towards the valuation. And they could be anything from wider hallways, heightened bench tops or reduced. Often in the bathroom, there's wider showers, and also too, even things like the toileting facilities can be quite different. So unfortunately, that's not always taken as a value by a traditional valuer. But what you do see is the difference in the rental income achieved. Now, the rental income achieved does depend on the dependency level of the individual going into the property, because there is a scaling system that comes with that. You'll also notice here that the tax benefit is quite different, and also to the cash flow summary. Again, I'm not going to go into anything to do with tax. I'm simply going to say that there are some cause and effect that happen with that, and some of them are to do with depreciation of property, for example, that have all been taken into account here. So as you can see, though, the two properties that we've used are comparable. They blend into a traditional suburb. They can be what we call infill, so it could be an existing suburb that's already been established for a long time, and that a property has been replaced, or it was a vacant block, or it can be part of a whole new suburb. The point of it is that we've tried to compare. We've got Cessnock and Southwest Sydney. We didn't have anything in the exact same area because I want to use live studies for this. But I'm sure you can all see, based on the amount spent and the return and the positive cash flow back into your pocket as an investor, the return absolutely outstrips the traditional model. The next one that we have, thank you, Max. We've actually been able to do Sunnybank in Queensland. So we actually had some things that were, excuse me, on the market at the same time and in the exact same area. As you can see, we've actually got, this is not a traditional house. This is actually a unit or a townhome accommodation. Again, these are perfectly acceptable for NDIS. It's not the outside facade what makes an NDIS property. It's actually the internal workings and the accessibility to the person in need. So again, we've got here rental achieved, obviously a huge gap between that. And we've got the positive cash flow down the bottom, $500 positive for the NDIS. And I think it's 277. I've just got my screen slightly blocked there for the traditional. Our last one's a little bit different. Now, our last one is actually Victoria. Now, I've actually, look, for all fairness, I actually put in here both positive and negative. This one you can see is in the same area. There is a huge difference between the purchase price and the completion price. Now, again, that also does have an impact on the scaling that we use behind the scene, or sorry, the metrics that we use behind the scene to actually work out someone's cash flow position at the end of it. But as you can see in this one, it's actually slightly reversed. The traditional is actually outstripping the NDIS as far as the positive cash flow on that one. What I would say, though, in relation to that is that the lifespan of this NDIS program that has actually been brought up is 20 years. Now, what that means is it doesn't mean that you have a tenant in your property for 20 years. The program itself has actually been guaranteed for 20 years. Now, you can't say the same thing about any other program. You can't say the same thing about any other accommodation setting, that's for sure. So again, this is all at your own discretion to do your own research, but I did want to show the positive and not negative, but the difference in these properties. I could have actually put up a property that shows nothing more than, you know, a 15% growth on a property and compared to something with a 2% yield. But we wanted to be fair and actually give people proper information on this. But again, as you can see, just specifically looking at the property types, they blend in. You can't tell the difference between the NDIS property, the renderings of that, which is up the top of the screen, and the traditional.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Mel, I mean, it's a lot. I've just been told that the chat has been disabled. So what I'm going to just do is enable chat. So my apologies for some of that. We are just, as I said, getting used to presenting these things on Zoom. So really an exciting, Mel, an exciting presentation of some figures there. Really some powerful acknowledgement that, an investment in SDA with a single individual on an $80,000 income with a 30% deposit can generate quite a substantial return on that investment, which far out and exceeds the traditional investment. It's quite yeah. I mean, for me, it's quite amazing, and I guess I think we probably just maybe go through a few questions. So Mel, if you don't mind, I'm going to maybe ask you a few questions.
Sure.
You can perhaps. I mean, these are, just to be very clear, these are this is something we've done before. So Mel, the changes to the NDIS and investor mortgage landscape. You mentioned a slow uptake from banks. Has that changed recently?
It has. So in the last 3 weeks alone, again, this is something that Reflect's been pushing with our providers. We've actually been able to extend the loan to value ratio up from what was traditionally 70% to 80%. And this is probably the biggest key as well, is previously the income that is actually generated from NDIS was not recognised. So in some cases, we're looking at, say, $57,000. And I use that number because it's the average of what I'm actually seeing come through that are attached to these properties. A $57,000 income was not being used. What was being used by the banks was a market value or a market rental. So really exactly what I was showing on the other slides. Now, the impact that has to someone's ability to actually obtain a loan and the serviceability of that is astronomical. So for some of the financiers that have actually worked with us to incorporate that income, you can imagine that people who otherwise may have been a little bit handcuffed when it came to the financial side of things, as far as the bank was concerned, their ability to service it, having that income now counted and recognised has actually pushed people to be able to invest in not only one but multiple properties, because it's actually propping up their income. So it's actually been quite substantial. But again, it's not every bank.
Yeah, I'm just going to unpick that for a minute, Mel, because I just want to make sure that I'm clear about this. So you're saying that previously a bank, on valuing an investment in an SDA property, would ignore the SDA rental and would only take the commercial rent as if it was normally a rental to someone from realestate.com, from a leasing agent. So that would be at a significantly lower level than the SDA or NDIS disability rent. So that's what you're saying. You're saying now what banks have acknowledged is that this investment class has a different rental income. Correct.
And again, it's not all banks. So I'll give you an example, and it's one of the most recent files I was working on. The market rent on the property, it was what we call a dual living property or a dual keyed property. So it had 3 bedrooms at the front and 2 at the back. It had a market rent of $710 per week, which is still a substantial rent, especially for the area that it was. But as an SDA property, it was $2,100 per week. So, I mean, the person that was actually buying it, funnily enough, was in what I would call a limited income situation. So his income was pretty topped out. He was going to struggle to service based on, in fact, he wouldn't have serviced the loan based on the $710 being used. But on the $2,100, he not only was able to service that loan, but that income then obviously is being used to service future loans. Yeah. So yeah, it's significant.
And let's just talk. So first steps to becoming an SDA investor, Mel. What do individuals need to do if they're to contact you?
Yeah. So the first thing we do is everything has to be tailored to your individual needs. So it is a session with me. I'll sit down and go through with you. Or sorry, can't necessarily sit down thanks to COVID. But we'll do a session just like this, or even over the phone, to uncover what your needs are, and obviously the financial viability. Are you able to service the loan without any hardship? Again, we give no advice at all on property or on accounting or taxation. We simply look at the options available to them as a lender, from the lending point of view. So we go through the matrix of lenders that we have available and find out and really go through the nuts and bolts of it in an individual situation. Because the other thing that people need to recognise as well, especially if you're building one of these properties, there's a period of time where there is no rent being achieved. So there could be a build time, for example, of 12 months where you need to be able to carry that debt. And I need to ensure that you're doing that safely, that you're not in any financial disadvantage. So we look at the sort of properties that might work for you as well. Is it building brand new, or is it actually buying something off the plan? Is it buying something already completed? Or is it buying something that's, maybe a dated home and then retrofitting it? We look at all those options. Then we move forward towards, obviously, applications. There's a lot of compliance work that goes into it. To be honest, the customers are so sick of hearing from me by the time we actually get to the property and the application, because it's just making sure that we do everything that we need to do to ensure everyone's moving forward safely. So the first point of contact is contact us. Send me an email. We'll set an appointment and just go through what that looks like for you.
And just picking up on that as well, Mel. So the types of dwellings you can invest in are what?
Yep. So you can invest in brand new, so already completed. You can do construction yourself as well, or you can actually buy something that is not an SDA property but make it SDA compliant. Now, I'm just going to say on that last one, we do see people wanting to do that, especially when they're wanting to keep family and loved ones close to them. If they don't find, that there's maybe a vacant block or something like that. We can also help with where someone does have a larger block, even doing a subdivision on that block and then building on that as well. So there's multiple different things. That's what Reflect is about. It's about finding the right solution for the client. It's not about trying to fit sort of square pegs into round holes. Everyone has very, very different needs. So look, if it can be built, we can lend on it. The one exception that we have is it can't be portable. So no mobile homes or anything like that, no transportables at all. They're just not mortgageable for us. But we can certainly point you in the right direction for that as well.
Well, great. So I think, and I think what that's touching on, or what we try to demonstrate here, is that there is a real financial reality to investment in SDA homes. And that's even before we touched on the social impact side of it. Obviously, we're hoping that some of the individuals that are attending today, this is a solution for someone that you may have as a family member, or someone who's close to you, or someone who's a close friend. These are the sort of social impacts that we know. So there's a real financial impact and there's a real social impact. And I think if you combine those two, it's a fantastic opportunity to get involved in this. Mel, look, I'm going to wrap it up a bit there, but I know we've got a couple of questions that have come through. So I'm just going to go. I don't know if you can see the chat, Mel. I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah.
Got a few things here. First one is from Jay. How do you go about getting a site for SDA approved, and does this need to be approved before or after the dwelling is completed? Look, good question. And I think, look, when you're building an SDA property, you don't need to get it approved by, there's no sort of, these can be SDA, these cannot be SDA. But obviously there are there are 4 types of SDA properties. And again, we're not going into that today. And you have to develop your property based on certain criteria around the requirements of those properties. So there is during construction, there needs to be a targeted, definition of what type of property you're going for. And obviously you can try and do that. And look, Jay, I'm happy to try and take this offline. And we will be putting comments. I think there's Joseph maybe is putting my email address and my contact details, and also Melanie as well. So calculation of rent, it appears you're combining rent and SDA payments. These are 2 separate income streams. That's correct. Look, again, we're not getting granular around everyone's individual circumstances, but there are a number of different income streams from rental. And look, it depends. SDA properties can have a number of different rental streams. What we've done is we've tried to give people a fair reflection of what we believe properties can contribute. But yes, you're correct. Sorry, who's that coming from? I think it was from Colin. Yes, you're correct, Colin. Look, it is nuanced. We have tried to give some examples where there's comparable. There's NDIS properties are giving more. NDIS properties are comparable, or maybe perhaps even slightly less. But we're happy to, again, break that down and work with everyone in their individual circumstances. And just as a caveat as well, and without putting too much, putting any fear into you, look, the NDIS landscape does change. It changes for us as a provider. I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but it can change on a monthly basis, and that's okay. I think there's the SDA property is one of the big pillars of and contributions to the community. And once people get SDA, that will be there for a period of lifetime. SDA property can have non-NDIS residents, a shared community. Look, absolutely. There are various different ways that the NDIS is now determining properties and property types. One of the major developments is a change from supported independent living, so SIL, the old traditional group homes, to what's now considered independent individualized living options, so ILO. We can help with those conversations around ILO, SIL, and SDA. The NDIS loves an acronym, don't they? But yes, there can be a shared community. Yes, we can tailor developments. We're actually working on a SIL property, so a group home property at the moment in a place just near where head office is in Bowral in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales. And we are looking at that being a flexible environment where there's potentially a 3-bedroom residence with 2 1-bedroom separate residents. So sort of shared community concierge model. We're super excited about that. Watch this space for when we get some further down the track of that. So Kari, should you be able to finance self-providers in terms of granny flat? Look, if you can finance your granny flat, awesome, great. If you want some bridging finance, I'm sure Mel would be able to help that. I'm not know if that's a question, but I hope that does. Can you buy an SDA property and have your own child live in it? Absolutely, 100%. We know that there are various different ways that cannot be set up. So again, without getting too complicated, if you want to buy it and have your child live in it, no problem. If you want to buy it and have it as a charity or a not-for-profit, there are some complications in that. Again, sorry, who's that from? Sylvia. Sylvia, if you want to come and take that offline, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. We're currently going through that with the family that are investing in that property that I just mentioned in Bowral. They want it to be something that's in a not-for-profit or charitable trust. And yeah, there's complications, but yes, if you want to just buy a property and have your child live in it, awesome, go for it. We can help you do that. No problem at all. The returns based on the right people renting the property, how is this achieved? Or is this a conversation about potential financing? Look, Colin, great question. The mix of individuals living in a household, whether it's a disability household or a student household or a shared household or my household, is always complicated, and there is no magic button. But yes, some of the rental returns we've determined here were based on, on a predominant, on people with disability living in that house and receiving a certain amount of income. So again, we can happy to break that down.
Yeah.
Email address for Mel, yes, there's Joseph's just included that. Anyone that wants to contact myself, we've got a 1-800 number or info. Diana, we've got a few questions. I'm still going through these. It's awesome. Thank you for your chats. Are the end tenants need known before you start? No. We've worked with a number of developers in the past that have just worked on a development. There was one I think we did in Denali, which was 14 units, and we had no concept of who was going to move in before we did that. The one caveat, and just as an experience that you need to think about, one of the things that you need to consider is that there is, and we know this is for a fact, there's a disparity between the development of certain types of SDA housing and the allocation of SDA funding for people's plans. So for example, we know that there are not enough robust houses being built, and there are lots of people with robust SDA funding in the plan. So, those need to mix. And robust housing has certain development requirements that are in excess of normal housing or even some of the SDA. So there's a disparity there. Again, don't want to get too complicated, but essentially, you don't need to know the tenants, but you need to think about who you will be approaching and who has the requirements in your location. Multiple investors for each property, up to you. I'm sure Mel can deal with multiple investors. It probably will complicate the application process a little bit, but
yeah. Look, we can even do unit trusts, family trustees, or it doesn't really matter. That's your choice. Yep.
Patrick, who acts as the SDA provider and how do you find tenants? So the SDA provider is a good question, and there are multiple ways that that can be structured. Again, I don't really want to get into the legalities of some of that stuff. You can build a house, engage an SDA provider. You can be the SDA provider yourself. We can talk to you about how that can work. It is complicated and it's a bit nuanced. And again, but there are some really helpful, very generous organizations that are doing this and have done it really well that we can put you in touch with. Again, we're working with this family in Bowral, and part of their hope is that the experience that they have and all of the legal advice they receive, they will give away for free. They will sort of publish to try and help other people do this. So, watch this space. I can build you 2 SDAs. Thank you, Andrew. That's awesome. And use it to start an NDIS provider business. Well, we're already an NDIS provider business, so don't need your help there. But thank you very much. Build as many SDAs as you can. And that, I think, is it. I feel like I was really rushing through a few answers there. I hope you all heard that. I'm going to say it's 35 minutes past. That's a pretty cool time to wrap it up. Is there anything that anybody else would like to ask me in the meantime, or ask Mel? You were asking a question. It sounds like a statement. I can build you 2 new SDA and use it to start. Or can I build 2 SDA properties and use it to start an NDS provider business? Yes, Andrew, you can. Yeah. I don't. Obviously, as I said, depending on which SDA buildings you would like to develop, and the NDIS requirements to become a provider are not as straightforward as just building a property and becoming an SDA. There's all sorts of audits you need to go through, and accreditation and policies and procedures. Again, there's plenty of information out there about becoming a registered provider. And we would encourage you to do so. The more registered providers out there providing SDA and SIL would be awesome. Colin, if you're taking SDA, you need to be a registered NDIS provider. Well, you don't necessarily need to be a registered provider, Colin, but you can liaise with an SDA, an SDA provider. So you can develop the house, have an SDA provider, and stuff. And so that's what I'm talking about there, Colin. But yes, you need to be there needs to be an NDIS SDA provider there. Yes,
involved. Yes, but it doesn't have to be you necessarily.
No, we can talk to you about doing that with you again. Do you have any purchases of buildings ready, Sina? There are lots out there. Again, we're not the people that you need to be talking to, but if you go on to Nest. Or summer housing, or I think there's a couple other websites out there. Perhaps Joseph, maybe you can just quickly Google which ones I'm talking about. I think it's Nest. They've got a housing hub. There you go. Thank you. Sina, check those out. If you have any struggles, come back to us. We've got some friends in Victoria that were working on some properties in Bendigo. I'm not suggesting that that's where you are, but we've got some people in Victoria that we could liaise and link you with. Happy to introduce you to them. They do new builds for SDA, and they're looking for tenants. How do you find tenants, Patrick? Yeah, good question. Look, it's a challenge. You need to go through the classic when you've got a house that you're looking to rent, you obviously put it up on Real Estate or Flatmate Finder or one of those. The way you find SDA participants is by engaging local providers in the area that you're developing that household, and asking the question as to what, and potentially if you're doing a 12-month build or an 18-month build, you can engage with people beforehand, and you can and you can start to have those conversations. So it could be that someone needs a robust property, and that family really want to live in, as I say, Janali, and that neatly dovetails with your development of a property, and you develop a robust property, and that's a marriage made in heaven. So I guess it is tricky. I'm just trying to work out where my questions are today. Okay, so is there a development, SDA, how do you find tenants, housing hub? Question for Mel, what is the normal time frame for a refinance if I was to use the equity in my own home?
At the moment, most banks are up to about 30 days just for assessment, which isn't great news. That's what happens when the market is as active as it is at the moment. But anywhere between, on on average, it's about 15 days just to be picked up and assessed, and probably 30 days after that. So I would say a 45-day turnaround for equity release. And then obviously you move forward into the SDA, but we generally try and do the application simultaneously, so that when we know the equity release is going to be available, we've already started the process for the purchase for the next one. But yeah, I'm going to say on average about 45 days at the moment from start to finish.
Great. I've got a question here. Any good developers in ACT? There are lots of good developers around there. Yvonne, yeah, look, we can help you off that. I don't want to sort of name names here because I don't have an exhaustive list in front of me, but yeah, there's some awesome developers in the ACT. There's some awesome people in the ACT. So yeah, we're happy to help you there. There was a direct message from Sharon. If you buy an SDA property for your own child, do you still get the rental assistance? Look, again, I don't want to comment about exactly your own individual circumstances, but the answer is yes, you still get, if your child gets SDA, it's not predicated that they have to live in a house that's not owned by you. So yes, you still get the SDA. So yeah, you know, that's just, you know, do that. If you have a child who's doing that and you can do that, talk to Mel about the finance. Yeah,
that is a lot of what we find is families wanting to obviously make sure that their loved ones, their kids, are in a safe, stable home for them, and yeah, they're taking benefit, or they're taking advantage of the fact that they can actually do this as an investment for themselves. And that's the real difference. That's the difference between what's happening now since 2020 and prior.
Yeah. Yeah, and then comment from Veronica, suggest you find a tenant first and build a home, 100%. And look, there are lots of tenants out there, lots of people with SDA. Yeah, so you find a tenant, do it that way. I don't disagree with you. I think it's a good way of doing it. Do you know of any developments being built in the southern suburbs of Adelaide? Sylvia, I love Adelaide. My wife is Adelaidean. I've actually spent a lot of time, a lot of Christmases down there. I don't know of any developments being built in the southern suburbs of Adelaide right now. But look, when I was down for Disability Expo down there probably 18 months ago, sort of pre-COVID, I know that there were a lot of SDA developments happening. I haven't got granularity on that, but again, happy to help you. Happy to help you, Sylvia. You know, maybe just send us an email and we can start to work on. We've got a team in Adelaide. Auscare Support actually have a small team in Adelaide, so we may be able to hook you up with with some of those. Thanks, Mel. Thanks from Simon. Yeah, thank you, Mel. Appreciate everything. And look, we're going to wrap it up pretty soon, but we've got Kylie. How long is the estimated time with NDIS to approve our SDA provider application? If I knew how long the NDIS took to do things, I would be a magician. But the bottom line is you should anticipate that if you are looking to become a provider, it can take between 3 and 6 months. And if you are applying for SDA for your relative, whoever it may be, that process can take 6 to 9 months. I wish I could have better news, but these things don't happen instantly. They're a significant funding channel for the NDIS, and they take the decision exhaustively, if that's the right phrase. They don't do it lightly. They do it with a lot of time, and the process does take sort of that mark. So, but if you're kindly looking to become an SDA provider, yeah, I'd give it at least 6 months. It could be shorter. It's taken me 8 months already. Well, I've been told up to 12 months. Farida, I'm sorry that you've had that experience. When we got accredited, it took us 6 months, and this was in 2015. I think the accreditation process is not getting any easier, but they've probably had more resources thrown at it. I mean, look, it just depends. If you have all your policies and procedures and everything, and you're ticking all the boxes well, you can be doing that. My aged care application is still ongoing, and that's 12 months in. So yeah. Can I send a recording? Absolutely. We're going to publish the recording on, I think, on our Facebook, on our LinkedIn pages. We will also try and distribute it if we can via an email, or it may just be a link to our website or something like that. So yes, Kerry, happy to do that. Guys and girls, 11:42. I've really enjoyed this. I really think that we can do this again, and I think what I'd love to do, I'd love to take away from this that some of you will have the opportunity to discuss with Mel your individual circumstances, and you can start the process of that for whoever it may be, whether it's for people you don't know, whether it's for a family member. who knows? You know, it's yeah, it's really cool. We really hope you've enjoyed it. And thank you all so much. Thank you, Sinead. Thank you, Veronica, Farida, Luke. Yeah, awesome, guys. We will, as I say, put this up on all of our social media. If you know of anyone that wants to talk to Mel or myself, yeah, just get in touch. We are more than happy to help people try and access the NDIS if you have struggled with that. Don't put, you know, we've helped people that should have had plans a couple of years ago. We've helped people on a pro bono basis just to navigate the complexity. So, you know, if that's what you need, you know, come talk to us. Farida, I don't know if there's an SDA support group, and Luke, is SDA tax for an individual wanting to build your own? I don't really understand the question there, Luke, but I'm assuming that you're asking around, and I don't know that now is necessarily the forum for discussions around tax stuff. I think that might be something we want to take offline. Grace, my client is a participant of NDIS who has purchased property. I want to invest in the modifications house. Can I get a return rent by doing that? Grace, that is a really complicated question, and I don't have the answer to that, I'm afraid. So yeah, all the best. Happy to take that, Grace, offline if you want. Again, that's a complicated question. I'm not sure I've got the capacity to answer that. Emma, thank you very much. Olakan, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Veronica, touch base about your son. Awesome, let's go. Yeah, trying to build granny flat suitable for our own block, need the finance sorted for others. Talk to Mel, that's what we're here for. Yep. So yeah, Carrie, talk to Mel. Yeah, awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Please do reach out to Auscare Support, Plan Management Support Coordination, Budget Builder. If you've got people that are struggling to unpack their plans, let us know. We can help you with that. Or just get in touch if you've got some questions around, you know, finding a developer in the ACT. You know, we don't know them, but we can ask some of our contacts, and we can try and tap into some of our networks and basically get you some access to those. So yeah, it's, you know, we're happy to try and help. Final words there, Mel? Anything you want to just wrap up
No,
with?
I just want to say thank you so much for putting this on, Max. It's been an absolute pleasure. I was actually really nervous, which is quite funny because I've done this for so many years, but this forum is just so different. But thank you guys for hanging out with my nerves, and I hope it has been informative, and please do contact me for anything that you need.
Awesome. And Joseph, maybe if you can just punch our contact details into the chat there. And obviously everyone that's registered, thank you for registering. Thank you for being here. And looking forward to trying to just, you know, activate this. If you've got anybody that wants to ask any other questions of Mel or myself, please just reach out. Thank you all very much.
Thanks so much, guys.
Contact details, Olakan, it's going to be in the chat very shortly. So Joseph will do that. Thanks, Sinead. I don't know if that's Sinead from Victoria, from Melbourne, but thanks, Sinead. Yes. Hey, Sinead, how are you? Yeah, good. Thank you all. Thank you, iSupport Services. Thank you, Olakan. I don't know who else. Joe Thorne there, Dale Connor, Mark Truscott. I don't know if that's Andrew's brother. Kylie Jupp, Joe Lyons, obviously from Auscare Support. Sharon, thank you. Dean, Nancy, Mick, Carey, thank you. Sina, Wally, thank you. Veronica, Andrew, Chris, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks all very much. Looking forward to some follow-ups. Thank you, Moinda. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, Sina. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. All right. That's
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thank you. Oh, Grace, yeah, look, that's a client conversation. Happy to take that offline. Turning my house to son's needs, his whole house needs to be client. Oh, Kylie, yes, sorry, you asked that earlier. Again, that's a nuanced question that I don't feel I've got all of the information that I need to answer that. Happy to take that offline. Joe, perhaps if you can just reach out to Kylie and just get something direct from her in terms of her information. I'm happy to take that offline, Kylie, and try and help you. If we can't help you, there's other people that we know. Greg Barry at SDA Services is particularly important in the SDA services. So that's, I guess, the other thing I probably should have mentioned. I guess if you are thinking about an SDA application for a participant or a friend or a family member, look, just come and meet with us, and we can introduce you to a couple of people that we know that help people go through the process of SDA. We really are. We're quite friendly with Greg Barry and his team, Amanda at SDA Services, and they are literally the preeminent SDA application provider in Australia. He himself has lived experience. He went through the process with his daughter, realized what a horrible situation it was, a horrible process, and has dedicated the last 4 or 5 years to doing that. So again, if you want some information like that, please reach out to us. We're happy to try and introduce you. Again, we get a lot of buzz out of trying to get people involved in this process, and we really we're going to put all of our recordings up on our website and our socials. So and I don't know how you've registered, Richa, but if you've registered via Eventbrite or Facebook, you should be able to get contacted directly from there. Certainly from Eventbrite, we've got your email address, but if you're registered on Facebook, you may just need to come back to our Facebook site. So obviously Auscare Support, and we'll put that on there, and obviously we'll share that with Mel for Reflect Money.
Yep, and we'll share it out. Thank you, Theo. I just saw you jumping in and out. You're actually one of my long-term guys. It's quite funny when you actually see people that you haven't interacted with for a while in this space, and I'm actually seeing them come up the side of the screen. So there we go. All right, on that, thank you very much once again.
I'm going to press the end meeting for all. So thank you all very much. We wish you all the best. Do reach out if you need any help. Thank you.
Thanks.